is more. You could say somebody is a fixture on the scene, except that he's not ever a fixture. He's not ever in a fixed place. He's always in 10 different places at once, as a poet and as an editor and as an organizer and as I'm just making up a word here, an inspirator, an inspirator of the local poetry scene. So I think that's a good point to stop. Jamie Reid.
I want to take everybody's picture, if you don't mind. Just because this may be my last book, and it may be the last time I ever appear in public to read poetry, so I sort of want to record it. Okay, I can't see anybody here.
There's lots of people here.
There they are, now they've appeared. That'll do. Thank you. I'd like to thank George, and I'd like to thank Cass, and I'd like to thank Warren for all the work and all the patience they had in preparing these chapbooks. And I'd like to thank my wife Carol, who helped me very much with the design of it. Two chapbooks are pretty good looking, and I'd like to commend them to you. I think it makes more sense to read the whole book through. I mean, this is bad news and I'm going to read the entire book, but the good news is that it's quite short and it doesn't take very long. And I may leave out a couple on the way, and I may make some commentary on the way. So what it is it's a collection of homages mainly to French poets, and mainly to modern French poets, beginning with Charles Baudelaire. There is one exception. There is an homage to Jack Spicer that begins the book, the San Francisco Renaissance poet that George was associated with back in the 1960s. I'll read the homage to Jack Spicer starts the book because I learned something about poetry from Jack Spicer that I never learned from anybody else before. And the poem mentions Peter Lookoff, who is a kind of famous underground character in Vancouver. He was one of the founders of the Georgia Strait, and he's a doukhobor. And he was one of the first people in Vancouver that I knew that went to Cuba. So the poem refers to that, so you may have had some difficulty in understanding it. Anyway, he is the doukhobor to whom I refer, though his full name isn't there. This is the homage to Jack Spicer. I'm weary of this dialogue with the dead. They talk too much, but they don't listen. Their ears are stuffed with dirt, or worse, burned away in calcium fires. Why are we haunted by these particular ghosts? They dream in triplicate, once for themselves, once for us, and once again for the world at large. They whisper rather than speaking. They are gathered unceremoniously at the bottom of the garden, smoking gold wasps, swearing under their breath. What did we do to deserve this? The silence is better and more meaningful. What happened to the notion of harps in the afterlife, the music of the spheres, which they were supposed to hear better than we do? My friend, the doukhobor, once transcribed the voice of the ghost of Federico. Well, Federico is Lorca, of course, Federico Lorca, the great Spanish poet. Never having read his books. It came to him out of the bottom of a wine glass while he was eating pumpkin seeds. Peter spoke Spanish perfectly, though with a Mexican accent. But Federico spoke to him in English anyway. Maybe it was Peter Sorokin sneaking around in the afterlife, putting on masks and disguises, begging him to go away with him to Uruguay and stay well clear of Cuba. This poem shouldn't end this way, but it does. The dead know less than we do. This one is to the founder and the Pope of the... Oh no, I'm not this time. This is to one of the first great modern poets, is Charles Baudelaire. If you're familiar with him, you'll know what I'm talking about in the poem. The fog of Paris encloses you. The fog of Paris encloses you, your hard, sharp nose, recessive chest, whining words from the shadows, like a wheedling cat, someone one day said, his name now almost forgotten, none like yours. You have eyed them all. Within your incised soul, you've dug in all their sicknesses. The fog seeps in beneath your upper eyelids, a slight and pleasant sting that brings cold tears as onions do, pain without significant remorse. Your white handkerchief strokes them from your cheek impatiently. Nature's living temple is defiled as you observe, knowingly, deliberately indifferent. You stroll alone in the darkened park, feeling the caresses of the eyes of the trees, their familiar glances of disappointed love. The homage to Arthur Rimbaud, who was sort of the alter ego of Baudelaire in a certain kind of way. Also one of the inventors of modern poetry, the Western modern poetry. It begins with a quotation from a poem called Génie, which in French is La musique savante manque à notre désir, which is usually translated, and I don't fully understand why, even the sovereign music fails to satisfy or fails to meet our desire or satisfy our wishes. Let's say there's this knowing music everywhere, filling all the air, even when unwanted. Let's say there's never been enough silence, so much desire everywhere. Let's say a blue and perfect silence at last arrives, like the silence that fell upon you in Africa. Will not that silence, like the music, always also fail to satisfy our full desire? Unlovable Arthur. Homage to, for those who aren't aware, like Rimbaud gave up the writing of poetry at the age of 21 and never wrote another poem after that was published. He went away to Africa and became a trader of various kinds. He traded in guns, and he did adventurous tours through the northern part of Africa, selling goods out of Harar. Homage to André Breton. André Breton was the founder of the Surrealist movement in France. So this is a Surrealist poem. It would look like an abandoned pair of shoes on the waterfront, like somebody else's puddle on the sidewalk, like a view from a small bridge across a small creek, forded by baptismal acolytes like sleepwalkers. Among them, like a tourist, a would-be Jesus, strutting his long locks, dozy Dionysus, large head of hair on a massive head. It would be like a moment of waking in which the trees outside are momentarily confused in consciousness with the design on the curtains inside the room. It would be forbidden in this new society to make the distinction between sleeping and waking. The registry of dreams and nightmares would have priority over every other ministry. Open only at night, attended by the half-awake, the half-blind, and the half-dead, half-deaf. New rules issued every morning, countermanded at night. The trains would depart today, arriving yesterday. Obviously, nothing would ever be on time. In fact, it would be against the law to be on time. Later, rewarded. Earlier, punished. Advertisements begin with the words, "Be sure to stay away from all of this." The food arrives at the table long before the diners, cleared off the tables before anyone can touch it, surrounded with whispers of poison. Each day's work begins with the analysis of the previous night's dreams.